Ries Show from Southern California. This is The Ryan Ries Show. Post your questions using @Ryan Ries on his Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. Are you ready?
All right, it is going down this Saturday night. We have a very special guest who flew in from a far land. We have Phil Evans in studio. You guys have heard his story. I think we labeled it on YouTube. It's called A Story of a Whosoever, was it? Do you remember that?
I remember.
Look up Phil Evans, A Story of a Whosoever,
From
I believe.
a land down under.
From a land down under, mate. He's down from Australia, and from Sydney, Australia, actually. And his story is incredible. I remember interviewing you a couple of years ago. It was before COVID, so it had to be a couple of years ago. You kind of mark everything with COVID at this point.
That's right. It was right before
pre-COVID. But yeah, it was a very powerful story of how you grew up with not a father figure around. But you guys have to go listen to it. But he's out here now and from Australia, just flew in 14 hours, left in the morning and landed in the morning. And that is the worst flight because you're delirious because you haven't slept because you've been up all day. And here we are in the studio, fresh.
Going for it.
Yep.
Thanks for being on the radio.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Joining us. We're homies. You have ran the Whosoever's movement down in Australia, Sydney with Jason down in he's down in Adelaide.
Yeah.
And we've toured Australia several times and had some really awesome experiences with you. I took my wife Crystal down there. We met up with your wife Cassie, right?
Cassie,
yeah, Cassie, and your kids. And you've just you've just been a blessing, honestly, to us and our family. We just fell in love with your family right when we met you with me and Crystal. You were just like, come to our house. And we were delirious. And you're like, just sleep there in that room over there. And we were just like, man, they were just so inviting. And we just became really good friends at that first tour and ever since. And now, today's this conversation, you are on a journey as we all are, but you're stepping out by faith. The show's about stepping out by faith. And I wanted to get you in the studio because I legitimately just wanted to hear what's going on and where God's leading you, and because I believe your story is going to encourage a lot of people. Because there's a lot of people right now that are in a place where they're stagnant, they're comfortable, but they feel like there's more. There's more that God has for them, but God can't necessarily move sometimes until you step out by faith, or the scripture says walk by faith. It doesn't say sit by faith, right? There's a time to pray, fast. You're always in the Word asking for direction, but then God wants you to actually move, just like Moses. Think about that story with Moses. Is we know that he grew up in Egypt under the rule of Pharaoh and knew the law of the land of the Egyptian land, the secular world, if you will. And then he went out to become a farmer, or taking care of actually sheep and stuff, more of like what do you call them?
Shepherd.
Sorry, I feel like I just got off the plane. A shepherd for 40 years in training for something new. But then God tells him, go deliver the nation of Israel. But if he would have just stayed there in that, being a shepherd in the wilderness, and he would have never stepped out by faith to go, and he was scared to do it, but if he would have never stepped out to go, then he would have never been used to deliver the nation of Israel from Egypt. And here you are a shepherd because you are a pastor of a church for many, many years. Hawkesbury, right?
Hawkesbury.
I always mess up the names of everything. But you were a pastor for how many years have you been there?
I was a senior pastor there for 7 years.
Yeah,
youth
senior
pastor. Before that, for 8 or 9 years before that, I was youth pastor, and it's the church where I got saved. So
how many years total have you been there? So 7 years,
20 years.
20 years.
Just short of 20 years, yeah.
See, just under 40.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So what's going on with you right now? You've been teaching there, and where you at in your life right now? What's God doing?
Last time I was here, just before COVID, unpacked a fair bit of my story, both in my life and in ministry, and so. But nearly 3 years on, in May of this year, we finished up as I finished up as the senior pastor there, and there's so much to it. It's hard to kind of nail down exactly where to go, and I've chatted a bit with you boys about it. But
Well, let's just walk through the process.
Yeah,
We got
yeah.
an hour.
I think the sort of the catalyst early on was a real shift in just first of all, I'd starting my devotional time just simply saying, Jesus, I'm here.
Right.
And it sounds pretty simple and straightforward, but just that idea of just really being present with God rather than going through the motions of reading the Word and trying to get something for the next teaching or whatever it might be. And
Yeah.
you guys know what that's like. And but just started to go, Jesus, I'm here, and having that time of just silence and solitude before God, and that idea of sitting with Jesus, it kind of is a threefold, I think, expression of submission, in the sense that, we sit just simply being with Him, like just simply as we are, and the image of the thief on the cross who said, just remember me. Like, he had nothing to offer, he had nothing of any substance except, I deserve to be here, you don't, remember me. And so just that simple sense of just being and being loved in that place, without the doing, without the achieving and the accomplishing, and then
Because that you feel like sometimes like that gives you your worth and your values
for
by
sure. Yeah.
well, I'm doing this for God, I'm doing that for God,
Yeah.
and now here you are in that simple place going, here I am.
Yeah. And so, and then learning to listen, Samuel as a young boy, here I am, Lord. Speak, Lord, I'm listening. In the temple as a young boy, again, that image of just sitting and waiting, and then ultimately being ready to go. Isaiah, here I am, Lord, send me.
Right.
So there was a kind of a big restructuring over the last couple of years just in my prayer life, and that was awesome. But Casey and I, we'd been seeking God and praying and working through a bunch of things, and the overarching sort of theme for us was around we want to live from a place of kingdom submission, not personal ambition. And so that was sort of some phrasing that we sort of started to process and pray through, and even looking around me and seeing peers in ministry who were just fading out. They're stepping out on their wives. All this sort of stuff, like just all sorts of things. Just going, there's something wrong here, and just really seeing the contrast between the career path of ministry and just fully submitting to God, and that was really big for me, because what I've done in stepping out isn't a good career move.
Yeah.
It's so you step out in a place of submission rather than ambition, and our ambition is not a bad thing if the end game is to honour God. But often I found, as I looked at peers in ministry and stuff, their ambition was about ourselves and building a career and building whatever it might
A
be.
name, a career,
a
big ministry. Yeah.
Even I just couldn't care less. Like, to be honest, I'm just like, I just want to live a life of submission. And Psalm 19 says, let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart please you, my Lord, my rock, my redeemer. And I hear that, and I was praying that last year, going, that's all I want. That is all I want. And so it started this sort of onion peeling thing, like onions have layers. I learned that from Shrek. But just this unfolding of a real sense of some of the things that God wanted to really minister to us in, and then also just coming to a place of being okay with how God has made and equipped me. I think we can spend a lot of time walking in, similar to, when Saul gave David his armor, and it's like, this just doesn't fit. And I feel like there was a season where, I put on an armor and I'm just like, I can fight a battle on this. I can do some stuff, but I just isn't a fit. And just recognizing some of those unique ways that God has shaped and called me, some of the experiences and the people that God has called us to as a family, and where we really come alive. And a lot of time the modern expectation of a pastor is almost like a CEO. And I push back on that. Now church is such a beautiful community, and there's so much room for me to push back on that. But at the end of the day, you've got to run this big organisation, and I just want to be where people are meeting Jesus. And that defined the first 10 years of my life as a Christian in ministry. And so that kind of set this whole thing in motion, and just didn't make sense, and I was pushing back and fighting it, and just you and me, Ryan, we talked a lot about. I reached out to you, and we just because I wanted that wise counsel, but just so grateful to God, like the end of 1 Thessalonians, Paul signs off and says, the one who has called you is faithful to the end. And it's like, I'm just holding on to that. And it was really cool, actually, right before I got on the plane, my little brother sent me that verse, and it's one I've been holding on to for 12 months.
Awesome. I was just going to ask you, I'm during this process, has there been any signs? Like, has God confirmed with anything? And here you go, you just dropped the verse, which that's the one you've been holding on to.
Yeah, and then
he's
he
like,
just sent
bing.
it. Yeah. But he's a bit of a hipster, so he sent it in
the
Greek.
message.
No, in Greek.
Greek.
But yeah, so it's just kind of. I had to Google it. But yeah, so it's scary, and there's these 4 things that God's shown me, which I'm happy to share. But this is kind of where we're at in this place. You mentioned Moses in the wilderness, and I preached a series last year, and part of it was. It was in the Gospels, but part of it was this idea of choosing the wilderness, and how, we as Christians run, in Western Christianity, we run from the wilderness. It's hard, it's lonely, it's dry, it's all these things. But then when we see, whether it's Abraham, when Abraham first gets called towards a promised land, like, he's walking along the river, but then God calls him into the wilderness, and he's got to choose to go away from where everything's sustainable. That's how they lived back then, along the river.
Right.
Like, they couldn't, and then he chose to go through the wilderness. You see it with the Egyptians, with the Israelites coming out of Egypt. In order for them to be set free, where did they have to go? The wilderness. Now, they didn't have to go there for as long as they did.
Right.
But and then Jesus, like. We don't like that the Spirit led Jesus into the wilderness to be tempted. Like that doesn't, that we might have that as a theological idea, but in the way that we want to live out and practice our faith, I don't think we're about that. So there's this core conviction in me that I think there's seasons as followers of Jesus where we've got to actively choose the wilderness. Now, it doesn't mean you turn your life upside down like I have. It might mean that.
Yeah.
But like what is that place where all we do is completely trust God and allow His Spirit to minister. I love that, after Jesus in the desert and he gets tempted by Satan, all the things of the world that we're all tempted by, and then just the angels came and just ministered to him, and that image is it's just so rich, So we're in that wilderness.
What you're saying that you and Casey came up with? What was it?
We want to live with kingdom. From a place of kingdom submission, not personal ambition.
Kingdom submission versus personal ambition.
Yeah.
Very, very good. I really love that a lot. And I think that definitely that's a great place just for ministry, people in ministry, and even like people that are listening right now. Like, it's so easy to get caught up in ambition. Yeah. That's the shiny objects.
And that's what God's doing a sifting in the church worldwide right now.
Yeah.
Like the church has gotten hammered, but probably in a good way. There's a lot of stuff that's come out, particularly in Australia with significant churches that really shaped so much. There's obviously a significant church in our country that's now around the world, and around the corner from us, and there's just been a real shift. And
how is that with
there?
What's going on with it's Hillsong? What's going on with them right now out there? Is there a shift in the church in Australia?
I think it's been a badge of honour for everyone.
Yeah.
For many years in Australia. Like, it's been a significant thing to come out of, only 20 minutes up the road from where we are. Yeah. And they've done amazing, beautiful things in our nation around the world. But there's also some stuff that obviously, God's bringing to account. But I don't think it's just that. I think it's across. I think it could be a church of 20 people, and I'm seeing that happen.
Exactly.
Well.
We're not pointing at Hillsong. I was talking to my dad this morning at breakfast, and we were just talking about how there is because we were just looking at the signs of the times and what's going on with the church and just the culture and everything. And my dad's like, dude, there's a sifting going on in the church. Yeah. With pastors and leadership, and he's really seeing. My dad, I think if I quote him right, he was just saying he's shaking and seeing whose are his, and who's going to be scared to preach the truth and stand for what's righteous, or who's just going to go along with whatever. And those churches are being sifted, and you can see churches emptying, and churches, the ones that are standing for the word, are growing, and the ones that are just playing games. There's just stuff coming out. Yeah.
It's you bring up that you said selfish ambition, right?
Personal ambition.
So there's in Oswald Sanders, it's a leadership book. Dude, we've gone through it so many times, but that's one of the chapters is on selfish ambition. That's what it's pinned there, because you have to be ambitious, right? Be a visionary and a lot of stuff, but it needs to be like sanctified. It needs to make sure that it's not you trying to put your name in lights and doing all these things that are self-motivated, where it's something that's really where God's leading. And sometimes in ministry, if you're not careful, those lines are getting blurred. And you have to really check your heart, like, is this something that God's really leading us to do? Because before you know it, before you just start building upon something that is not a solid foundation. And before you know it, you get discouraged with this, you get discouraged with that. But when you're being led by the Spirit of God, then He takes care of the results. And you walk in humility in all of that, and God gets the glory. And that's why you have to you do have to reflect on your life. You got to reflect on your ministry. Is this where God has me? I don't want to just go through the motions of things. You see the error of certain things, and there's lessons to learn from this ministry, or lessons to learn from other people like closer to us that have gone before us, and just finding what that niche is for us. I think the important thing is also knowing who you are as the man that God's called you to be, and not trying to be something that you're not. I think one of the dangers that people do is they see that pastor online, or they see this ministry person online, like, I want to be him. Well, we're different, Your wife is different probably than that person. Your children, your lifestyle, and when people try to emulate something that they're not, that's where they get themselves into problems. And that's like, you got to know your own home. You got to know your wife. You got to know your children, like where God's leading your family, where God's called you in ministry. Because when you find that sweet spot, you're going to have the peace of God. Yeah. When it's not there, you might be doing all these things in the outward. God can even use those things too. But
He uses donkeys.
Yeah.
So
it just might not.
He can use it.
Right. But I think it is wise to like kind of reassess and be like, okay, maybe this was a season. Maybe I went off left here, right here, or I'm just think that God has a different calling in my life. You got to be sensitive. That's all about hearing God's voice.
And you're wearing the shirt right now. The back of your shirt says "Thy will be done," and that's that place where you're at. Is just going back to basically the basics. It's so interesting that you're saying this stuff, because, I've been in a season right now where I feel like I'm in the same kind of place right now. I'm just going what's this next season look like? I don't want to keep pushing it's like, like that saying, we've always done it like this. Well, I've always done ministry like this, so I'm just going to stay at the church and be a pastor what you were doing. But you're like, no, I want something new. What are you doing now, this new season? But you got to go back to that basics and just let God take you on this journey and find out where you're at. I've been up in Boise, Idaho right now, and I've been there for 6 months. And I was there since December, and I've been telling my wife, like, God told us to go there for a season, and we're there, and I'm like, I'm not trying to connect with anybody. I haven't reached out to any churches or anyone. I'm just kind of like going to church. We're visiting all the different Calvary chapels, and just, I don't know, fishing and skateboarding, and really not, just kind of between my two, we're just kind of hanging out and doing whatever, but really haven't pursued anything. And I kind of feel like I'm in that, John the Baptist, he left the mega church and he went to the wilderness. Amen. Well, I'm kind of in the wilderness. I'm in the country. We didn't even have Wi-Fi there. But I've just been sitting there waiting. And then after 6 months, I connected with Calvary Boise just naturally. Like it just kind of happened with the pastor there. And now after about 6 months of just being there and not really pursuing anything, God kind of connected the dots. And now looks like we're going to try to invade every school in the whole area. You know what I mean? But that was just kind of waiting, not really having a plan, waiting for God to connect the dots. But that ambition is I could have went there and been like, hey, I'm Ryan from the Whosoevers, and we're here, and we invade schools for a living, and that's what we do. So, like, come on, let's all get together, and let's go rally and go. But I was like, God, like, what do you want to do? And I feel like God's kind of opening these doors, and that's where we're at right now. But even with, it's always hard to always have that balance of, like, what is of you, God, versus, like, what's my ambition to do? Because you have that fire in you. You know what I mean? Because I know your heart personally. You're like, dude, I want to see people get saved. I want to see people get discipled. You have a love to preach, to teach. You were in the school system there in Australia, which is like, you're not even allowed to talk about God really. It's really liberal there in Australia. But I know what's inside of you, what God's doing with you and what you have. But now you're kind of going, okay, God, but what? You put all that in me. Like Jeremiah says, if I don't speak the word, the name of the Lord, His word burns in my heart. Yeah. I know you got that. It's in you. So now you're just going, okay, God, but what do you want to do now with me? And that's a very hardcore place to be in your life,
And you feel really misunderstood. Like if we get vulnerable for a second, like you feel like I feel intimidated by you, Sean, because you're pushing on, man. And I go, do you sit there thinking, I feel he's giving up on this? Yeah, it's hard and he's giving up. I know I haven't because I fought tooth and nail, and I know that this is the giving up. The safe space was for me to stay in that role, keep collecting that paper.
That's the easy way.
Keep my kids in a safe community, all that stuff. Yeah. I know that. My wife knows that. People close to me know that, and I know you know that. Yeah. But every time I'm around a fellow pastor, I'm like, they're just probably thinking this guy's piked,
Yeah.
So you got to wrestle with all that as well because you're like, this is just.
I don't think you've given up. I think you've stepped it up. Yeah. This is gnarly too. I mean, this is not giving up. You definitely did not take the safe route. And that's so it's quite the contrary.
Well, that's the thing. It's like it's so easy to go through the motions, and I think that anybody that's done ministry and pastor leader can know that sometimes those things happen. And so for us, like, I know I've had to do that too, like check heart and be like, what does God have for me? And we have to all be sensitive to that because it's not, we get the culture around us, people like, or you do pastor or this, whatever, titles or whatever. You just do ministry. Yeah. You have a heart for people. It's like ministry doesn't end. It's just different form where God's leading. I think we put things in the box, because you go through those different things. I don't think there's anything wrong. Like for me, like I have passions of like sports and athletics and stuff like that. Dude, if God leads me in that world, but I hear what you're saying too, because sometimes people are like, well, this is the way we do it. This is the way you should do it. This is what you're set up for.
Progression.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing that you got to really be careful of is you're not trying to just go through the career path in ministry. Mm-hmm. And with what's it called, Western Christianity, it's so easy to fall into that career path. You're a youth pastor, then you turn into the pastor, and then this and that and whatever. But then you go look at these other churches in these third world countries like China. They're having these underground churches they could die, or in Africa or whatever. I mean, it's a whole different way of doing ministry, and I think that's always the reason why we got to keep looking at the scriptures and build the model to what the scripture says, because Jesus has given us the model on how to do ministry. But it's a very interesting place. This is to be. This show is with Phil Evans from Australia. He was a senior pastor out there, if you're just tuning in, and now he's taking a step of faith. Step of faith, calling God, telling him, hey, I'm just in a place of right now just full surrender. Show me what you want to do. And now you're here. You just landed. So what's the game plan now? So you're here in California. Why'd you even come to California? And where are you going?
I came to California to hang out with you.
Yeah.
And just the plane comes through.
Yeah.
And I'm actually on a bit of a kind of a retreat. So I'm heading down to Tennessee for a week.
What part of Tennessee?
Johnson City. So down to Matty Montgomery's church down there.
What? Oh, you going there to meet up with them?
Yeah.
So that's that old school. It looks like an old school church, right?
Yeah.
I saw photos of that.
Yeah.
So is he from Tennessee?
Well, he's in Johnson City. He's not from there, but that's where he's planted the church. So he planted the church just before COVID, and it's exploded. But I've just got a cabin on the lake in the woods. I'm just seeking God, and
Sick.
there's an Aussie pastor who went over there as well, who I'm kind of connected with, and so just seeking God, and then gonna continue that on it. I got a friend who's got a big farm up in Canada, and just seeking God. Like, so we've done a lot of family time, and now it's just going just to really consolidate a lot of what God's showing us. And Casey and I really felt that it was a right thing to do, for me to have that. And a big part of this journey is around fathering as well. Early last year, just in journaling and stuff, just got the phrase that legacy comes from this 15 years in terms of my kids. We got kids the same age, Ryan.
Right.
All our kids the same age, and the next 15 years is the most critical time of my life. My most important ministry is the next 15 years, and and so really just wanting to just be with God, connect with the Father heart of God. A lot of what I shared about my story, a lot of the insecurities and things that come up are through that, and just so it's just about setting time aside just to seek God, for what's next, but also just to be with God
Right now, yeah.
So I've got some rhythm set up each day, and I'm just going to sit in the woods and see God, and then get some wise counsel kind of interspersed in there, and some good worship and community. So
This is very inspiring. This is very inspiring for everyone that's listening to find time to be able to get away and just focus, because we get so caught up with just family and just life and just everything. It's hard to really get that time to hear, especially when you're making those big decisions.
Yeah, and kudos to Casey. She's amazing. Like, just so releasing in that. And,
you need that.
So
Awesome. Well, we're going to be going to a break really quick for about 2 minutes, but I want to plug you guys into our YouTube channel. And I messed up last time I was on the radio. It's what is our YouTube channel? Is it Ryan Ries Official?
Yeah. So Ryan Ries YouTube, that's where you're gonna find this show.
Yeah.
There's some of your speaking stuff that's on there too. But on the Whosoever's YouTube, you can follow that as well. You have some of the tour videos that they've done. I know some movies that have dropped and stuff like that. So they do exclusive stuff on the Whosoever's, and they do more of the show and stuff of Ryan speaking and stuff on Ryan's.
We split it recently, and we have some films out. So if you want to learn about the Great Commission and see it in 2019, 2020 to 22, you'll see different videos. If you want to see, remember that video of Sonny Sandoval going on the trip with us, because he was seeing all this cool stuff of ministry happening on tour, and he's like, dude, I want to go. I want to see this, because he's been on tour, and I love he went on that trip. I love to say it because he went on that trip like Sherlock Holmes. He was like investigating what is going on, and that moment when I called him out to pray for that person, he was like, "No, dude, no, I don't want to." He was all shy, but then God did something awesome, and that really just increased his faith to that God is alive and real. He knew it, but that God is still moving in power. So go check it out. Go to the Whosoever's and watch some of our films and be encouraged. And contact us. We'd love to come to your city. We'd love to come to your state. We were just in Utah. And, man, Utah was a crazy place, because it's all full of Mormons. And the city where we were in was filled with 98% Mormons. And they said it had the highest teen suicide, the highest young pornography, all these huge statistics in this 98% Mormon town in right outside of Salt Lake City. Crazy. So you look at religion, it looks all clean and nice from the outside, but the undertone of what's going on with statistics, it was brutal. But God showed up, and we've seen some awesome things happen as we led people to the Lord and prayed for people. But check out the tour films on our YouTube, and we'll be back in 2 minutes right after the break. Peace.
More of The Ryan Ries Show coming up. Post your questions at Ryan Ries on his Instagram, Twitter, and or Facebook.
Over the past 4 years, an astounding 51,000 students from 7 states, 5 countries, and 183 schools have responded to the gospel message because of the Whosoever's Kill the Noise tour. A 15-year-old living in today's world gathers as much information in one day as a 15-year-old 80 years ago would have gathered in one full year. Do you realize the youth suicide rate is at an all-time high? Listen, in the next 24 hours in the USA alone, 1,439 teens will attempt suicide. Every 100 minutes, a teen takes their own life. 2,795 teenage girls will become pregnant, and 15,006 teens will use drugs for the first time. The increasing amount of noise bombarding our students daily is destroying their minds and souls at an alarming rate. For this reason, the Whosoever's Kill the Noise tour is a necessity.
All right, dude, we are at the Kill the Noise tour. We're in California right now, and it's about to pop off. We're getting everyone ready. We're gonna pray, and then basically the event's gonna start, and we're gonna see all kinds of kids come to the Lord. It's gonna be sick.
Our mission is to reach as many students as we possibly can with the message of the gospel. This is no easy task. We need kingdom builders like you to join us in this battle against the ever-increasing noise that surrounds the lives of these students. Please consider helping us expand this mission by partnering with the Whosoever's Kill the Noise tour. Thank you for empowering future generations with us.
Now, back to the Ryan Ries Show.
We are back with Phil Evans in studio, fresh from Australia, a 14-hour flight, leaving in the morning and arriving in the morning.
Not just you arrive before you leave.
You arrive before you leave because
So
you
I
guys
left
are
at
16.
11:15 in the morning on Wednesday, and I arrived at 8:15 in the morning on Wednesday.
Oh my God! You guys are 16 hours ahead
So it's,
from us.
Yeah, something like that.
So how is the future? Does it look bright over there?
That's not great.
He's fresh in from the future. Tell us about it. All right, so this whole first half, man, we just been going through like your journey, but now let's see what God has given you to leave everyone with. What are the steps that people can take from on this journey from you? What has God showed you?
Yeah. So there was over the last year. What I'd say is I was actually going to bring it. I think it's over there.
Want to get someone to grab it?
Lucas, can you throw me that green book? Thanks, mate. Sorry, it's not very professional.
Let's do it.
That's how we do it down under.
Right, mate.
But what I'd say is, like, if there was ever any encouragement for me in journaling, thank you so much. Like, this here was my journal from last year, and just like page after page of just seeking God, and you know, this is probably one of my most valuable possessions now. You know, the old, if your house was burning down, what would you grab? Like, probably this. Wow. After my kids. 2 of them anyway. But yeah, so God, over last year, me and my wife sat down at the end of the year, and we just kind of looked through our journals, and we got to the point where it was like, either we don't believe that God is speaking to us, that we kind of discount 80% of all of our time spent with God last year. You know, like just go, no, that wasn't God speaking, that was our own head. So basically saying all that time was a waste. Or we believe what we heard and we're in willful disobedience, or we take a step of faith and go, okay, we're out, we're stepping into something new. And that's what we ultimately did. But Casey's really good at clarifying. I'm quite scattered. I've got a million things going on in my head, and Casey's really good at just honing it in and going bang, bang, bang. And so she kind of honed down all the things that I was sort of unpacking stuff in my own life into 4 things, and it was like super helpful. And so I might just kind of share those a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
But the first one was essentially around. So I've always prided myself on my loyalty, and I think that's because of how I grew up. A lot of people leaving, a lot of rejection, a lot of that, and so I, from a young age, was like, I'm never gonna leave, you know. So whatever I've done, I've always stuck with it. I've got friends from many years ago. If I take something on, I hold on to it, and probably to an unhealthy extent at times, and to the point where any sort of leaving represented something bad for me, because I'd only ever seen bad leaving, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so if someone said, what's a strength? What's your greatest strength? I would have said loyalty. And I remember I think it was January 1st last year, and I've got a big chalkboard in my garage office. I've just got a kind of prayer space thing, and I was writing on, and I was feeling really dejected. I thought, I'm going to write down the things that I think, you know, I do have going for me, you know, that I'm winning. So I wrote down loyalty, and straight away, probably, you know, as audible as I've ever heard from God, just in my spirit, I got this sense of I'd never asked for loyalty. I asked for faithfulness. And it was like a kick in the guts, because I'm like, that's the one thing I feel like I got going for me, God. Like, and then, you know, it took me down this rabbit hole, and I did a word study on loyalty and a word study on faithfulness, and just realising so we see loyalty in the Bible, like loyalty to each other, and, you know, Jonathan was loyal to David and things, but we never see God asking us to be loyal. We see God asking us to be faithful.
Right.
And as I unpacked it, it was like this journey of going, loyalty is about a person, an organisation, a creed, a particular, you know, whatever that might be, whereas faithfulness is simply about being who and being where God wants us to be. That's it. And I was like, far out, because there was so much identity tied with sticking to something and staying. And so that first pillar was God desires faithfulness over loyalty. It's not to say that loyalty in different areas of life is bad, but when it comes to our pursuit of God, or when it comes to who we are and where we are, it's about faithfulness. Because everyone around us could completely misunderstand, and I feel that at times in this journey, completely misunderstand where we are. But if I can stand confidently and go, I know I am who and where God has called me to be, that's faithfulness. Obviously, faithfulness is a fruit of the Spirit. Loyalty isn't.
That's amazing.
So that was kind of that first, back to that onion illustration, first sort of peel of going, okay, almost permission to leave. Like, just permission, just going, hey, that's a possibility. You can do that, and that's okay. And that's, you know, and so that was like this. And I remember talking to our previous senior pastor, who's like a spiritual father for me, the most kind of father figure I've ever had, and sharing this with him, and him releasing me as well, and going, mate, like, you've been faithful. If God is calling you out, that's, you know, I back you 100%. And that was a beautiful, holy moment, and I'm so grateful for his graciousness in that. But that was the first one, faithfulness over loyalty. And it was big. And then I shifted into this. I was driving home from work one day, which, you know, it's only 2 minutes, you know, where my house is from the church, it's a 2-minute drive. So it's not much time to think and ponder and pray. But I had this sense of, like, when was the last time I felt stuck in a good thing, right? Like, I love our church. I love the people. I've got an amazing team. I've got, like, it's a beautiful church. It's the word of God is going out from there to people everywhere. Like, it's a beautiful thing. There's not much conflict more than your average people interaction, but.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but when have I felt this sense of being stuck in a good thing? And I remembered early on in my Christian walk, I'd started dating this girl at church, and it was the first relationship that was kind of healthy, and had its struggles or whatever, but relatively healthy relationship, and trying to put God first and all those things. And I remember very early on feeling like kind of trapped in this thing, but looking, going, she's a beautiful girl, she's got a beautiful family, she loves Jesus, we're honoring God. Like, this is a good thing.
It all looks good on paper.
I must be dysfunctional because and I remember even seeking counsel from some people in leadership and saying, hey, this is what I'm feeling about this relationship. And them in their, the right heart said, look, you've come from a lot of dysfunction. There's a lot of commitment issues in your family. This is probably that. You need to stick it out. And I ended up staying with this girl for 12 months and really hurting her in the end because I was like, I'm not there, and I had to come to that place, and obviously I'm really grateful I did because it'd be weird if I wasn't.
Yeah.
But God sort of downloaded that in a moment. I hadn't thought about that for 15 years, but He sort of downloaded this whole thing, and I was like, that's how I feel. I look around, everything's good, and you could tick all the boxes and go, this is good, but like there's this unsettledness in my spirit, and the longer I hold on. Oh, and that was it. So what I'd seen built, I think, from back then was this sense that if I feel God's put something on my heart, but you, Sean, come in and say, well, this is what I'm seeing, and in contrast with that, over the years I would have always said, well, surely Sean's hearing more from God than I am. And again, it comes from dysfunction growing up and all that stuff. And so realising there's an undercurrent in me that God speaks to everyone else, and whatever I have must be trumped by someone who I respect, and realizing in that moment, God is speaking to me. Like, I can trust His words for me, and so that was the second pillar. Just going, hey, like, I've got to trust that God is speaking, and He's speaking to me, and I've got to live from that place of conviction. And it's an obvious one, but it was really foundational for me. And it was like it all sort of downloaded in that couple-minute drive of just going far out. Like, I've been in this place before where something's really good, but I just don't feel right. And I listened to a lot of people who said, no, it's good. And then ultimately had to go, no, hang on, I think I'm hearing from God, and I need to step out. So that sense of really hearing from God. The third thing God showed me was around just value. I've always had this fear that somehow I've hoodwinked this little corner of the world in the Hawkesbury in northwest Sydney, that somehow they see this stuff in me, but if I step outside of that value isn't there. That I don't actually have, like Phil Evans doesn't have a place anywhere in the world outside of that community. Up until I connected in there, I didn't feel value. That was the place where people identified gifts, spoke life into me, and really I began to realise that, hang on, I had something to offer the world. That's where I got opportunities. That's where all those sorts of things. Whereas previously I was a grunt, who was in the way most of the time in most situations. But all of a sudden there was this value. But I've always had this fear. What if I step out of here? What if this is just this little oasis where Phil has something to offer, and then outside of here it's like, actually, this guy's a joke, Yeah. And so the third pillar was around wherever God is unvalued. Again, super simple, but just that sense of value comes from God. Because of a lot of the unhealthy attachment stuff I think I put on that community, because I didn't have my family around at all when I connected in there, and I found family, and I really attached myself in that way at that young age. And what that did was it meant that there was so much desire to please those people and to, and so, but yeah, coming to that place of going, no, like my value and what I have to offer isn't determined by man. I love how, so many of the epistles open with like, Paul, chosen by God. as an apostle, like that idea that I'm not appointed by man, and that's
like
not to
that.
negate the accountability and all that sort of stuff. But so that was that third one. And then the fourth one was simply like, and Sean, I'm sure you can relate to this, like, Sunday morning rolls around, you've got to get up and say something. Like that's what we're, there's a professional aspect to how we do our faith.
Yeah.
It can roll into all our devotional times where it's like, okay, I'm sitting with God right now, but I've also got a message to preach in 2 days' time. And so what I'm reading here, I'm trying to figure out how I'm applying it there because, and just really like, I want to live, I want to love, I want to lead from a place of like genuine, authentic encounter with God, like intimate relationship with God, not obligation.
Yeah.
Now, there's times we've got to grin and bear it and we just grit our teeth and go, we're stepping up. But even that, I want that to flow from this real sense of, God really shaping and forming something. And I just felt like, hey, if I'm real honest here, like it had been a while since I'd stood up and, had taught from a place of really going, this is something that God is sort of working in me, revealing in me at the same time, and I've always tried to lead and teach really authentically, and sometimes probably to a fault where I'll share, I maybe overshare in those spaces. But I felt even that had slipped where I was kind of going through the motions. I'm like, you know what? I want to live, love, and lead as a father, as a pastor, as a husband, as a friend, whatever it might be, from a place of authentic encounter with God, not obligation, not because I have to show up there at that time.
Yeah.
And realizing that, from when I kind of came to faith, I was pretty much in leadership pretty quick.
Right.
And you guys can probably relate to that as well. And it's like, just even in this season of being able to open the Bible for me, my wife, and my kids, and how selfish that felt for me of going, wow, that's selfish. But then like to have that season of the only reason that I'm opening the Word of God simply to sit with my Father, to be a better father, to be a better husband. Now, I don't want to do that for the next 50 years. That would get stale and stagnant. Like, but even in this season, at least 3 or 4 months now, just to be able to, and I'm not thinking about the next program, the next preaching series, or all these pastoral care stuff. It's like, and again, this is where I feel vulnerable. Where it could feel like a cop out. Like, yeah, it's hard, stick with it. But I'm like, I realised I don't think I'd ever really opened the Bible without a responsibility for a significant amount of people.
Hey, listen, what you're saying is very, very true. Because you can get so caught up and everything has to do with that next Sunday or that next message, and you don't have that time to sit back and just open the Word and just read it. Dude, so true. You could talk. You're in full time.
No, he's right.
Ministry as well.
And I think that there's probably many that go through this stuff too, and maybe feel like it's foreign territory. But it's something where you have to be open to God's voice, right? And hearing God's voice. I like what you said earlier. It's like there's a lot of godly people around us, people that have callings upon their life, and they might even say, I see you doing this. I think you should be doing this. Hey, I see you. You're very gifted at this, but you also can't deny where God's leading you in your heart. And so that's why you have to be open to make changes, whether it's from small things or big things. I know small things for me, like was serving in high school ministry with Scott Salamat, who's a close friend of mine, and just always there. Started up good, and then it was like, it's not wrong, it's a good thing, but I almost felt bad for not wanting to do it anymore, but it was a right decision because what it did was it moved me past that. God opened up a door for a different opportunity. Yep. And there's other things like Friday nights. Like I closed Friday nights about a year ago.
That was probably really hard.
It was a prompting in my heart. Taught 10 years. Now, if I just kept it open just so I could teach every Friday night and I do it because that's what I do. Yeah. But I had the same thing too, where I was kind of wrestling with it probably for about a year, and then I just flowed through it and just continued doing it. But as it came through another section, I was just like, I knew this was the end time. People were saying, no, keep it open. You even have a good night at the final one. They're like, dude, you got to keep it open. But I had to continue just listening to the voice of God because I could do that for the next 30 years. But is that really where God wants me to? Ministry doesn't exist for myself or for you or for you. Yeah. It's just like it's for God's people. And there's seasons of life, there's seasons of ministry. Things change. You got to be open for it. And even from that, like I went from teaching, at least once a week, but twice a week. I still teach about that, because I guess we can do different things for some of the other guys. But then there's a lull sometimes for a couple of weeks, and so it's just a different shift and change. But like even myself, and then you get caught up in other responsibilities. Our church has been hit pretty hard, so I've been having to focus on a lot of organization and administration stuff at this time. So it's still kind of like swimming through murky water sometimes, trying to be sensitive to God's voice, know the calling. At the end of the day, as you said, like you're right, like all of us got into ministry pretty early as far as once God got a hold of our life, you're full blown and it's like, it's go time. Sundays are just done, like this is your lifestyle. I mean, before you know it, I'm 18 years too, 20 years, it goes by like that, and always really, and your kids are growing up, my kids are growing up, and I'm just like, world's changed, that's a big thing too, right? I'm sure that's into your prayer life with everything. It's like, is my life that you pulled me out of darkness, showered me with your wonderful light, no doubt did an amazing work in my life. At the end of the day, we, pastors, leaders, you do a lot of funerals, so it's just like, when my day comes, did I complete the race that God had for me? Did I leave my mark? Did I leave the legacy in my children's life, in my wife's life, and those that knew me? Was it of value? Was it effective? And again, it's not about myself. It's just about like what God's given to you and just being sensitive. And that's what it comes down to.
Yep.
I think it's just reassessing.
It's the constant reassessing, and figuring out where God has you. That's the whole. I think everyone can relate to that because it's just the busyness of life, ministry, and everything. So closing, we have like 7 minutes left. What would be some life application stuff you would want to give to the just some like last thoughts that you would like to give to the listener? Say they're in a place right now where maybe you are, or they're just they want more from God. What would be some things that you would want to leave them with? Just a few afterthoughts, and if you have anything as well.
Yeah. I think that what I started with that, like Jesus, I'm here.
Yeah.
In that space of complete, I'm here in the midst of the chaos of my mind. I'm here in the midst of the chaos of my life, the uncertainty of the world. I'm here with my kids in the next room blowing up or sitting on the back of my head while I'm trying to get that. Jesus, I'm here.
Yeah.
With whatever else is going on. I would love the romantic idea of sitting by an open fire every morning and seeking God in solitude, but the reality, that's not life. You know?
Exactly.
And so that has just been such a powerful tool. And to come to the place where some days, like, that's enough. Now, I'm not saying there's a million different ways I open the Word each day, or not a million, but like listen to it in the car and driving or whatever. But sometimes just to sit and say, Jesus, I'm here, and that He delights in that. And so I think, like I said, like journaling's been a big part of.
I'm sorry, it's so basic.
It is.
It's so basic, but yet we overcomplicate things.
Yeah. The other thing I'd say is, like, I think we're often blinded to the way God has shaped us because it comes relatively easily to us. So, we've talked about schools and reaching out to people who are on the fringe, who are outside the kind of mainstream, even not just mainstream church, but mainstream culture.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of work in prisons and things like that, and coming to a place of realizing, hang on, there's something really unique in how God has shaped me, where I see fruit in that space, and it doesn't faze me to walk into a maximum security prison and sit with 20 blokes who could murder you in 3.5 seconds.
Yeah,
it doesn't faze me. In fact, I get excited about it, but it's taken me a long time to realize there's a lot of people who that is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
And so, and just going, so allowing other people who really know you to speak into it and to help you see those things you're probably blind to because of how easy they've come to you.
Yeah.
And go, what is it? And that's a big part of our journey is like, I can do the pastor thing, and I'm sure that there'll come a time in my life where I'll be a senior pastor again. But in this season, it's like there's some things that just make me come alive. You know, even the Husos, people talk, when I talk about the Husos, people see like that. Even now, like there's a shift in my body language when I start talking about those things. And that's so often what we need to press into. So I just encourage people to sit in that space. Jesus, I'm here, and then to really seek Him for those areas of our life where we truly come alive. And that's not the personal ambition stuff, because God has created us and formed us and given us gifts. And like you're a great example, Ryan. Like the things that God uses now for His kingdom were things that you were doing for the world previously, and now using them for the kingdom, because that's part of how God shaped you. You know, and so uncovering those things, and just being excited about simply being with Jesus and allowing His word to shape and mold everything we do. So
simply being with Jesus for the listener.
Yep.
That's basically creating a space in your time in your life to just be like, God, here I am.
Yep.
Like, here I am. I got no agenda.
Yep.
Like, literally, what do you want to do with me? Yep. And spend that time reading the Bible, listening to worship, and waiting. Waiting could be days, months, years, or whatever. You're just kind of waiting for Him, for His direction, and say, okay, God, confirm with me what you want me to do and lead me. And He'll use people to speak into your life and look for confirmations. Don't just go off like, well, this guy said this and I'm just going to go do it, But like, He'll speak to you, wait for those confirmations.
This has been The Ryan Ries Show. To connect and find out more about Ryan, click on ryan-reese.com. Check us out next Saturday at 9 p.m. for The Ryan Ries Show.
You're talking about that. You got to think of the Mary and Martha example that's there, right? Yeah. Because Martha was doing a lot of stuff, and her service wasn't bad, but Mary, Jesus said, took the most important thing, and that's just sitting at His feet. Mm-hmm. And that example is a good one for ministry, because a lot of times it's very easy, and we've seen this. I think all of us can be guilty of this. People that serve in ministry can be guilty of this, where you replace your worship of God with your service to God.
Yeah.
And before you know, you get so busy. Like we kind of like leadership
God
here.
Must really be proud of
we
me.
Encourage, and it's not to have rules and regulations on the people that serve here, but it's like we encourage them to go to church twice a week, where you're just receiving, Sunday morning, Wednesday night. It just helps, because and it should be where's the pastor teaching, whatever, for you. Just like when you came to the Lord, like you came to church without any agenda. You came to hear God speak to you and direct your life. And so that's important. You got to be able to know when you're just getting distracted and being busy with a lot of stuff, when you're not receiving, that will eventually come up to get you. So like always, no matter where you're at, full-time ministry, different seasons or whatever, it's the importance of receiving. That's what the Lord desires us, because He doesn't need us to do ministry. He gives us the opportunity. That's it.
The balance is to be a Mary and a Martha in one.
Yeah.
Because if you have that, then you're spending that time, which is the most important thing, but then you're full sending and doing ministry. It's the Mary and Martha. But then there's obviously seasons like Jesus, like going back to what you originally said, Jesus went to the wilderness. The Holy Spirit led Him to the wilderness. And He was there, and He was praying and waiting on God. So that's also very important. Yeah. Fasting and praying. That's what Jesus did. Mm-hmm. And Satan came to mess with Him, but He fasted, prayed. He defeated him through the Word of God, and then God used Him to launch this powerful ministry of Jesus' ministry 3 years. We'll be back, or we're done with the show. Peace.
This has been The Ryan Ries Show. To connect and find out more about Ryan, click on ryan-reese.com. Check us out next Saturday at 9 p.m. for The Ryan Ries Show.